Today on The Hustle, we welcome on college basketball legend, husband, father, and current ESPN analyst, Jay Williams. Jay, thank you for making the time.
It's good to be here, Matt. Appreciate it, man. Matt, can I ask you a question just to kick things off? Because I know Arthur has a hat on. How do I get my hair to look like yours?
Dude, this is, I have great hair.
I can't rub my fingers through anything here. There's nothing.
You know who you should talk about hair with?
LeBron James Barber?
Carlos Boozer.
Oh, that's messed up.
We're firing out the gate. Jay, what is your mindset here on month 1 million of the pandemic?
You know, it's shifted, man. It's went from, thrive, in the midst of chaos is a ton of opportunity to, to be frank with you right now, I kind of feel like I'm at this stage, a little bit of survive and advance, like March Madness, right? Like my wife is pregnant, so there are different issues we're having there. I just got my tooth extracted. Work is in a weird place. Like COVID numbers are going up, but yeah, I'm still going into the studio in New York. Different COVID protocols relates to that. Some of my friends just don't give a shit. Like they're still going out, kicking it. My mom is immune suppressed. My daughter's immune suppressed. I can't really do that. So there's a sense of like isolation and still trying to talk so much via Zoom and FaceTime with family members, but I'm kind of like in a weird place, to be real with you, man. It's hard to connect with so many people to recognize like what your reality is when you're living in a bubble, essentially. Like, NBA had a bubble, but we're all still kind of in our bubble, unless you're single and you just don't care and you don't feel like COVID could affect you. I'm just in a different boat.
You're in New York, right?
I moved out to Connecticut, man. We were in Brooklyn. We're going to go back to Brooklyn, get a place back there, but really, man, like during all this social injustice stuff, everything happening, and we went, which is even weirder because we kind of went to one of those, where we protest, but so the amount of people and some of the things that were happening in Brooklyn, like robberies and things of that sort, we just didn't feel comfortable. Like I couldn't go outside with my kid, so we were one of those families that we left Brooklyn and went out to Connecticut, and now we'll wait a couple months until the market kind of. And then we'll go back in and try to scoop something nice.
So, Jay, we're coming off the NBA Finals. Everybody's been having the MJ versus LeBron GOAT debate. I'm sick of it. I've heard every angle possible. So I want to ask you about the more important debate, which is the Jay Williams, Shane Battier, Duke national champions face off against Leitner, Hurley, Grant Hill, Duke national champions.
Oh.
Who is winning that game?
I think I'd get Bobby. I don't think they would have Bobby on me, but Chris Duhon would probably take Bobby. We'll probably put Shane on G Hill. I don't know. That's tough. See, we might have to put Nate on. There's nobody we would have had that could have guarded G Hill. That's the problem. We probably would put Shane on late and then Dunleavy or Booz, but I don't know. That's a hell of a matchup, man. I would like to think at the end of the day, we had more scores, right? Because I felt like we were a college version of the Golden State Warriors, but Leitner's won back-to-back championships. He's tough to guard, but I would take my chances with Shane Battier guarding Leitner. We wouldn't have anybody to stop G Hill, but I also don't think they would have had anybody to stop Dunleavy, Boozer, or myself. I think we would edge them out, but it'll be a hell of a matchup.
Give me a final score.
I'll have to say probably like 96-90, something like that. I think we'll probably give them like 5 or 6 more points, but we rode, man. Like we did have the number 2 to number 3. I think Bat was the 4th pick the year before we decided to leave. So if that's 2, 3, 4, and then Boozer turned out to be a perennial all-star, and then Duhon played in the league for 10 plus years. G Hill's probably the best one I've ever seen, though. So if G Hill doesn't get hurt, G Hill, we might be talking about Grant Hill like on the MJ level. Close to it. Maybe not 6 championships, but close.
Jay, I can't seem to remember what I had for breakfast, but I do remember your comeback in the 2001 against Maryland, down 10 under a minute, and then winning into overtime. It's one of the most shocking things I've seen on the basketball court. Can you talk about that moment for you and how it felt beating your nemesis, Steve Blake?
So Steve, here's the backstory. Steve and I were boys. Steve and I went to 5-star camp together all the time growing up. So
wow.
And actually, before that game, Steve and I were roommates for USA Basketball. I talk about it in my book. It was like myself, Steve Blake, Zach Randolph, Jason Richardson, Kenny Satterfield. And we went to Brazil for USA basketball, which was quite an experience. So I just feel like that year was like, everybody made like North Carolina was our squad, but like I only had beef with Steve because Steve and I were boys. We didn't talk, but we were boys. And Steve always got the best of me, right? Like Steve knew how to guard me. So that game in particular, man, it was like, have you ever had it? Have you ever had like a relationship like with somebody where you can't be yourself because you're too busy being overly analytical? Have you?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever had something like that, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
Steve,
Everybody's had something like that.
yeah, Steve was that girl for me, right? Like that opponent. Every time I play with him, like I just started thinking about my shit so much, I couldn't be reactive. And for me, I was at the best of my game when I was reactive. So that particular game, man, it wasn't until I got him to foul out that all of a sudden I felt like I can be me on the court again. And look, whether you're one of these believers that Duke gets all the calls or not, honestly, I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to get the call. And Steve got his fifth foul. And when Steve was out, I just felt like it didn't matter who they put on me. If it was Drew Nicholas, Juan Dixon at that time, I could just unleash. And next thing I know, like I score 8 points in a span of like 10 seconds. And Nate gets a crazy tip back, gets fouled, goes to the free throw line, game goes in OT. And it's one of those miraculous comebacks where it's like whatever happened. And I remember Duhan and I having a couple of beers the night before that game, and Coach K be like, whatever you guys did to win this game, keep doing it. And Duhan and I were like, all right.
How many beers are we talking here? Are you getting drunk before maybe the best game ever in college basketball?
Well, some would look at alcohol as a way to relax yourself, to relax the muscles, to not. And I don't really know exactly what it was. I don't recall. All I know is we won a chip that year. So whatever it was, it worked.
Right. He got so drunk he doesn't remember how many beers he had. You hear that on the Endless Hustle. That is breaking news here.
You said that, not me.
We just had this awesome moment, Jay, with Alex Smith returning to the field for the Washington Football Club. It's so weird even saying that Washington football team, whatever it is at this point. And it made me think of you because obviously you also suffered a horrific leg injury. To see Alex come back from, when you watch at E60 where you see what he went through, you're like, holy fucking shit. And to see him on the field was incredible. What was the moment for you? Because you obviously were never able to make it back fully. What was the moment for you where you knew it was over and it was time to move on to the next stage of your life?
Well, it's so funny. So I had to shift the narrative around, right? Because I think a lot of people on the outside looking in would say, well, you never made it fully back. And I would say, make it fully back to what? Right? Like make it fully back to being a perennial all-star, make it fully back to being on the court. Like I did make it back on the court. It didn't translate into a contract. But, I think everybody has to get to a certain extent. And I wonder when it's going to happen for Alex. Do I have more to gain than I do to lose? Right. And I'm just not talking about gaining from coming back and playing football. I think you quickly recognize when you go through some life shit is that all this world that we live in that glorifies being a professional athlete, it's not real, right? It's really not. Because as quick as it comes, it goes. Alex Smith doesn't come back. Guess what? We're talking about Dwayne Haskins, right? Guess what? We're talking about Dwayne Haskins not playing. We're talking about Kyle Allen. Like we're talking about all these different guys, right? Like our world of how we are enamored with athletes will go on and on and on. It will never stop. It is endless. But then a day for you, for a guy like Alex Smith, I know for me, I was like, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this to remember who I was before? Like, do I need that from everybody? Like, does that help build my self-esteem? That when people are like, oh, Jay, you came back, you killed it? Or like, do I need to start thinking about like my family? What kind of person do I want to be? So I wonder when it's going to happen for Alex, because in football, man, I saw it when they played against the Rams. Aaron Darnold came across the side and he could have smashed him and he kind of took his foot off the gas. Like it takes one bad hit at the leg for Alex Smith maybe not to have a leg. So you get into a certain point like where it's like, is that worth it? For me, it happened when Dennis Johnson, my coach in the G League, just randomly died. I was like, what am I doing? I'm chasing this ghost of who I was, and I'm not focusing on who this accident has allowed me to become. And I think when you start looking at your narrative that way, and you don't allow outside people, not that you even do that maliciously, right? You're like, well, you never really made it back. That's how people in sports talk. So for me, I had to shift my mind. I said, well, do I want to make it back to who I was before? Is that who I want to become? Or I'm actually going to let this opportunity that I had almost dying and going through life-changing event opened my eyes to what's really important. And for me, I was like, oh, sports isn't really that important anymore. It's fun. I love it. It's my way to, mess around with the guys and shoot the shit. But at the end of the day, it's not as fulfilling to me as finding out who I was or finding out who this opportunity has allowed me to be, if that answers your question.
That's a great answer. People don't realize, Jay, how good you guys are. Like, you look at someone like Dwight Howard, who you watch in an NBA game and you're like, this guy can't shoot. Meanwhile, if he's in practice, he hits 9 out of 10 threes. You guys are, the 12th man on the bench is the elitist of elite in any other league or sport, whatever. What's your pickup game like right now? So if we threw Jay Williams in a high-level rec league, how are you balling?
What's a high-level rec league? Like, who's playing in a high-level rec league?
Chelsea peers. Let's say the top level of Chelsea peers. They got some former college guys.
Matt, I'm going to kill. Like, I'm 39 years old. I know how to shoot. I know how to pass. And I know that I weigh 205 pounds. And like, Arthur, how much do you weigh?
I'm 169 right now, 6'2".
Okay, great. So I'm 6'2", 205. So I also know how to use my shoulders, right? So Matt, if you were guarding me, I will put my right shoulder right into the middle of your chest like that, and it will knock the wind out of you, right? So there are ways I can get around you without being Speedy Claxton. Like, I don't have to be on the court and be like James Harden with the ball.
Right.
But here's what I laugh about. Like, I'm in a lot of fantasy leagues right now, right? Just because being on TV, doing football, doing basketball, soccer, tennis, hockey. And I hear like guys talk like, oh, that dude's a bum. And I'm like, no, actually, you're the bum, bro. He's not the bum. He's making $1.4 million to play a sport. He may not be able to be LeBron. But what happens is when you get to the league, you recognize, like, when I was National Player of the Year 2 times in a row in college, I felt like I was a little bit different in college. When I got to the league, though, I was like, oh, shit, now I'm part of 0.001%. So then take the next step. So like when you see guys like LeBron or you see guys like Kevin Durant, that's 0.00001% of the 0.001%. What the fuck? Do you know how hard that is? So like, oh yeah, Rudy Gobert is a bum. Rudy Gobert is 7'1" and can move. He can move better than Arthur. You can, Matt, on the floor. He's 7'1". But people are calling him a bum, right? It's like Brian Scalabrine back in the day. He's like, oh, all these guys in Boston call me bums. He played like so many people one-on-one and nobody beat him. Like, it's all relative, like it's like broadcasting. Nobody can just jump on and be a broadcaster. Like, it takes a while. Nobody could be as good as you guys. So it takes a minute. So it's all relative, I guess.
Yeah, you got to remember that there are trolls online like us that feel better about themselves when they make fun of someone who's more accomplished than them. It goes two ways,
No, well, look, man, if a guy's killing you in your fantasy league, then you're allowed to give him shit. I recognize that. Right. Just when people are like, oh, this guy, I could do that. I can get him. Like, let's calm down here. Let's calm down, Joe in Tampa. Like, we'll be fine. All right.
You mentioned LeBron, and earlier this month, the Lakers went, full Karen and wrote a letter to the league about LeBron's lack of free throw attempts after I think he shot like 3 in game 3 of the conference finals. The next game he shot like 14 or something. Earlier this month, I think you rightfully criticized LeBron for, constantly bargaining with the refs. Do you think the opportunity cost of LeBron throwing his arms up after every drive is affecting his public image negatively?
So a couple of things. I got slapped on the wrist, and it was good because I learned something. Actually, every team after every game has a portal where they write an official statement to the league about calls that they didn't feel were warranted. So the Lakers have been doing something they've been doing every game. It's the same way that Milwaukee does it. All these teams do it. So that was a learning experience for me. But I do stand by my statement, right? Like, I sometimes feel first off, it's funny. All these incredible players that we were talking about, they're all human beings, right? Like, we all go through our array of emotions. And I feel like sometimes for Bron, he's so big. Like, he's 265 pounds. Have you ever seen him? Have you ever been next to him?
I have. He's massive. I've never seen a human being like that.
Okay, so I will give you this. I've been next to Karl Malone. I've been next to Carlos Boozer. Carlos Boozer and Karl Malone weigh the same sides that LeBron weighs. Put that in perspective, okay? Karl Malone or Carlos Boozer cannot move like me as a guard. LeBron can move like me as a guard. LeBron has a little bit of that Russell Westbrook in him when it just shifts into a different gear. So when he comes down the layman, that's a effing freight train. That's a freight train. So you can imagine, like, if you're a car, if you're a truck and you're driving and your truck is getting hit by gnats, right? You just turn the windshield wipers on and off. But it's like if you're in hour 3 of a 5-hour trip, after a while, you're like, yo, how many gnats can hit me? Oh my God, stop it with all these damn gnats. So I feel like Bron gets to a certain point where after a while, all these that the refs aren't calling because he's burrowing through it, and it doesn't look like when AI would get hit, and like you would see the ball come out, or AI would go, but AI weighed 165 pounds soaking wet. Bron's 265, so you're not seeing that. So I get it, but what happens is after a while, like when you get there, it's like, yo, bro, like you just got to go into beast mode. Like we're talking about game 4, game 5 in the NBA Finals. Like I don't need LeBron to revert back to, maybe if you're doing that in game 60 of the regular season, I get it. But when he turns that switch, ain't nobody stopping that man, bro. Ain't nobody stopping that man. He knows it. We all know it. It's just sometimes you get lost in the micro games within the game. And I think sometimes Bron still gets a little bit lost in that, but that should never take away from his greatness. What we're seeing, we may not ever see in the game of basketball again. Are there side effects, little things that happen here or there that get blown out of proportion? Sure. But I also recognize what we're seeing is different, man. It's different.
We had Jalen Rose on the pod last week. He was electric. Unbelievable hour with him. And you and him have become two of ESPN's most popular and biggest faces at this point. When we look at talking head culture right now, we have guys who come from the game like the two of you, who understand it, who can analyze it, who see it beyond what the normal human beings like us see it. And then you have the true talking heads who are just opinion givers. Mm-hmm. As an analyst and as a broadcaster, can it be frustrating when you know the game better than the people across from you? Or is it just the price you have to pay because people are coming from different walks of life?
So a couple of things here, man. It's a little bit frustrating because you have to, it's about the gift of gab, first and foremost. One of the things I'll tell you about Jay Rose that I love is that I never know what angle of attack he's coming from, right? There's nothing about him. It's like, oh, Jay Rose is going to say this. Like he always keeps me on my toes. And I love that about him. So sometimes it's like when you're going against a Stephen A. Smith or a Max Kellerman. Like I caught Max last year. It was like this epic moment for me because I have to talk about football now. I have to talk about NHL. But what I do is like when I start getting into debates, like I can't go into the depths of football to a degree because I didn't play football. I'm not watching I got NFL ticket. I'm trying to watch as many games as I can, right? But I'm not breaking down game film like Dan Orlovsky every damn day, right? Basketball, y'all, it's me. This is my shit. I'm watching it all the time. I'm telling you about nuances about footwork. I'm telling you about relationship issues off the court. Like I'm telling you about the whole context of it, right? So I know how guys are thinking and what they're thinking, or I'm talking to people that do all the time. So with Max is a gifted debater, right? Can take something, can see something, can spin the narrative, and can really open it up and expand it. And if you're not good at debating, right, you can't catch him. Well, that moment he was like, well, Kawhi is more clutch than Kobe. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And then I'm like, all right, so, but Max is only going based upon analytics, right? So he's looking at the analytics piece of it and saying, okay, in the small sample size, the analytics say that in clutch time, Kawhi is more clutch than Kobe. But for me, I'm like, okay, you want to use the analytics debate, let's use the eye test too. Tell me about the times that you saw Kawhi be more clutch than Kobe. Tell me. And he was like, well, I'm like, yeah, because you don't know about the times. You're only doing it based upon analytics. So but I never understand that unless I do TV for 13 years, bro. I never understand that when I'm talking to you for the 2 minutes that I'm talking to you in TV real time, if you're coming at me and I'm going back to you, if I don't understand how to maybe bake in some time where I'm just talking for the sake of talking while I'm thinking about my point, like pay attention to how people do that sometimes. Like I could be talking to you, I'm not really saying anything because I'm thinking about my point while I'm preparing to say it to you while I'm talking, right? So it's a little bit of a politician play where it's also about debate, but also about knowing your sport. So the more comfortable you feel knowing your sport, the better off you are debating.
When something like that happens, and we were talking to Jalen about his famous Skip Bayless dust up when
You
he
averaged
absolutely
2 points. You played 3. Yeah.
That was 1.4 points, not 2. Don't give him that much
Sorry.
credit there,
Yes.
Jim.
it was unfortunately third-degree murder for Skip. But when you had that with Max, it went viral as well. How is it behind the scenes after a moment like that? Because that's pretty much like you're sideswiping the guy. He might not be alive after that.
Well, here's what I look. Max don't give a shit, man. I am the biggest fan of Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman is a G. Like, he's probably the best there is in the game. First off, people don't recognize how difficult it is to watch every sport and to have an opinion about everything, man. Everything. Like, there's certain shit in my day. Like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. I honestly don't give a shit. I don't care. But for him, like, he has to get you to lure in, to get you to be on the edge of your seat to listen to what he has to say. That's a skill. That ain't easy. That's hard, man. But the beautiful thing I like about Max, it's never personal, man. It's engagement in war. Like, people have to understand. Perk and I, because Perk I think is really good at TV. We talked about this all the time. You come into certain chairs. Like, if you come on our show, like Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin, like, we're laid back. We're kicking it. Like, I'm not trying to catch you in an aha moment unless you start coming at me. You go into the debate of First Take, it feels different up in there. Stephen A. Smith don't walk on set until like 10 seconds left before we say, like, think about it. Like, you're on set, you get your mic on, right? You get your suit ready, get all your camera positions. Molly sits down. Max is there with this notepad, all these damn notes on every sport. You're like, damn, get you a little bit nervous, right? And you're like, all right, cool. Like, where's Stephen A.? And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, 15, 14. And you see Stephen A. walk on. You know the shoulders Stephen A. got, right? Hair popped up, sits down, does a little, cracks his neck, sits down, camera on, boom, 3, 2, 1. What's up, baby? It's Stephen A. here. Right? It just, if you ain't on top of your shit, you'll get a little bit lost now. And they'll take things that you say and use them against you. Right? It's being on that debate set because it teaches you in real, you gotta be, if you don't know what you're talking about, you're about to get exposed. And Twitter is gonna make fun of you for days.
Oh yeah. I'm a huge Stephen A. fan. What kind of guy is he when the camera's off? Is he as cartoonish as he is on camera?
Matt, it's 24/7, bro. Well, here's the thing that Stephen A. does. Like, Stephen A. like, hey, Jason, Jay Will. I'm like, what's up, Steve? He's like, come with me. Like, same gesture, everything, right? Come with me. So go into his office. Like, what's up, man? He's like, did you hear what just happened? Do you know what just happened? Right? And I'm like, why do I feel like I'm still on First Take right now? What is going on right now? Why are you talking to me that way? I feel like I'm watching an episode of General Hospital. But for me, like, he is one of the realists in the game. He's always going to tell you it straight up. Like, there's no bullshit. He'll be like, I don't like you. And here's why. A, B, C. Here's where you fucked up. D, E. Like, just real all the time. But you just understand that that's SA, man. Like, that's who SA is all the time. So when you see the video when the Cowboys lose, I'm like, I know he's literally at the crib watching the game, laughing like a crazy ass uncle. Like, that's who he is all the time, man.
Incredible.
Jay, the Bulls drafted 2 incredible point guards between you and D Rose. And obviously both careers were impacted by injury.
You're doing it to me out there.
I know. I'm dying to know this because I think your opinions are gold. If you stay healthy your whole career, D Rose stays healthy his whole career, who has the better career?
Well, wait, am I still in the horrible triangle offense, or am I out of that offense?
Yeah, no, the triangle is gone. You get to run the offense that you feel comfortable with.
I don't know. His MVP season was different. I didn't have that explosiveness like him. I had it, but not like, you didn't see me take off 2 feet, and I didn't have that here. What I did have, I could shoot it and I could handle it. I may have to give the edge to D Rose just because I don't know, man. That's a tough one. Because, I'm obviously crazy competitive, Like, I'm gonna tell you, like my game where I had triple double against J Kidd, I felt like I started to figure it out. Now, if you go back and you look at my stats were nowhere in comparison to D Rose's stats his rookie year. But I also came in playing the triangle where the ball was never in my hands. And our team, I wonder if our team was able to let go and just play fast-paced ball. It would have been myself, Jay Rose, and Jamal Crawford in the backcourt together. That would have been 1-2. And are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We had Bill Cartwright who talk like this all the time. And Bill Cartwright will go, Jason, damn it, timeout. And then Bill Cartwright and the staff will walk into the middle of the court. Me, Jay Rose, like, here we go. He's going to take 2.5 minutes of the 3-minute timeout, and he's going to come back, and he's going to tell us to run the triangle. And like, we've been running the triangle the whole damn season, the whole damn game. And then sure enough, Bill Cartwright would come back and be like, all right, guys, here we go. Jalen, Eddie Curry, eyes here. All right, here we go. Let's run the triangle. Like, I want to run the triangle, Bill. Give us something different, damn it. Let us play. You're killing. I can barely hear you in the court. There's 25,000 people here. You tell me to run. I can't hear you.
Bill, do you have bronchitis or something? I can't hear you.
It's the larynx injury. So I know I'm on a tangent, Arthur, from your question about D Rose. I may have to get a slight edge of D Rose, but then again, I don't know, because if I could have unleashed, man, I didn't feel like there was anybody in the league that could have stopped me. How about that?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because D Rose has some of the best high school highlights I've ever seen. If you get a chance, YouTube it, and you have some of the greatest college highlights. So that is really you can't go wrong. It's a win-win on that one.
Yeah, and D Rose that's my brother. But I'll tell you this for D Rose, which I give him a lot of credit for because I tried it. Playing in the city that you were born and raised in, I don't think people recognize how difficult that is, man. Like, you come from Shy, Matt, and all. If you guys got drafted, right? What happens within our communities for where a lot of our players get drafted from? Like, Jay Rule wasn't the only person that got drafted. Everybody that rode with Jay Rule got drafted. Never talk about myself in third person, but I hopefully did provide you context, right? Like, everybody that rode with D Rose, that hit him off with a hundo here or there, or his boys that got him out of bad situations, or the uncles that are around, or the family members, the moms, they all got drafted. What happens when you get drafted to a different city? With me, I couldn't uproot all those people that helped me get there to Chicago, right? Like, it was my mom and my dad. Now, that came with its own set of challenges, right? But if I were to stay and be drafted in the city that I came from, I can't escape that life. And I think that's one of the things that people don't give him enough credit for. Like, and you saw like the New York Knicks situation where he just disappeared, bro. Like, he's had some things that he's had to work through. And I give him a lot of credit. That's like, even LeBron being in Akron, bro. You know how difficult, like, LeBron James coming out of Akron, Ohio, then having the weight of the world. Like, that's why everybody kills him on the whole GOAT debate. And I'm not getting into that. But Arthur, it's like, damn, like, yeah, you know why he had to leave? Because he never got a chance to grow as a man. If he never got the hell out of fucking Cleveland, he never got a chance to grow. So he goes down to Miami. He spends a little time with D Wade, Patrick Riley. Whoa, think about that. All of a sudden, I don't have a crazy owner. Mickey Iverson's my owner to a degree, right? Like, Pat Riley, a guy who's won multiple championships with the Lakers, like, he's my GM. Eric Spoelstra's my coach. Like, you saw how great of a coach Eric Spoelstra is this year. So that I learned, and then the audacity, the confidence in him to say, no, I'm going to go back home and win one for home. Come on, man. Like, who does that? Who says I'm strong enough to go back to where I came from to win you a chip? You tell me who has the clout to do that.
Yeah. After making that egregiously awful mistake of, the decision, and then everybody turning on him, and then being like, okay, I'm coming back. I've always said this, that the LeBron doesn't get enough credit for living up to all the expectations set upon him when he was 15 years old. And like, you just don't see that. Sebastian Telfair, he didn't really rise above, and LeBron is we just take it for granted. And when he's gone, like everybody, I'm a Patriots guy. We won't be able to appreciate Brady until after he's gone. And then everybody can rah-rah. But we're going to feel the same thing with LeBron.
And I'll say this to you, Matt, just to be additive on that. It does help that the decision wasn't the best decision, But there was a pretty chunky 6-figure check that went to the Boys and Girls Club for him to do that whole debacle.
Yeah, he could have found that within his couch cushions and given it to the boys and girls. I don't know if that was kind of the impetus for that, but
Yeah, fair. But I mean, look, you tell me, how old are you, Matt?
33.
You tell me how you would have been at 20 years old if somebody gave you 40 million, bro.
Believe me, LeBron is better in every aspect than I would have been. I'm just as an outsider who doesn't have any consequences, I can, talk and with no repercussions. So that's my 2 cents.
I just feel like you put a little change in your pocket, man. It makes life different, bro. And for anybody that says that can't go to your ego, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Everything all of a sudden gets catered for you all the time. So if your relationship with your mom changes, where your mom's like, yo, Matt, let me get 5-10 grand, or, like your friends like, yo, let's do this business. Let's go here. Or, yo, that model's talking to you. Yo, this celebrity wants you to, this guy wants to fly you on his G4. Yo, you can buy your own G4. Like if you're single, if you don't have, that's why you see guys stay so close to their family. Like my wife humbles me every day. Like if you don't have that, man, it's easy for that to kind of go here a little.
Jay, I was just recently watching the Leitner 30 for 30 about how everybody hates him. And I grew up during that Blue Devils era. And I remember how great that team was. And you think about the tradition of hated Blue Devils players from recently. Grayson, JJ was off the charts. You weren't quite as hated. I think you were much more liked.
They all Luke hated.
Is that what it is? Like, so I actually want to ask you a 2-part question.
I don't know. Battier was kind of he got under people's skin.
Yeah, but not like Leitner,
Grayson, or
JJ,
Dunleavy.
Yeah.
Dunleavy was actually a white guy who everyone liked.
What is it like when you're in that position, when you are the most hated guy or team in college basketball? And then the second part of my question is, who is the most hated Blue Devil of all time?
Oh, okay. That's the viral moment that's going to happen from this pod. I see it already. I see it happening in real time. To answer your first question, it didn't really bother me. Like I wanted to go to Georgetown in North Carolina growing up. Like my dad was a huge John Thompson fan. We kind of got turned down by North Carolina because they thought I was more of a point guard and had Ed Cota and Ron Curry had committed. So, when Coach K started coming around, I got enamored with it. I didn't really care. And I don't know if it's because I had stuff in my bag that people didn't find me to be a hateable guy, but I just wanted to win. So I didn't really care. The most hated player, I mean, I love him as a kid, and I think it as a young man, but I think people have kind of forgotten. I mean, Leitner definitely will be up there, but I think recently, it has to be Grayson, right? And I would just say Grayson's going to have a long NBA career. People already find a way not to like a player from Duke, especially if you're a white player that has stuff in his bag. Grayson had shit in his bag. JJ had shit in his bag. So did Leitner, right? Like they could go. But I think Grayson tripping people multiple times and having those moments caught on the bench where he kind of like
lost it,
like through like a tantrum. I think that probably makes him up there. And I hate that because Grayson's an incredible kid. I meet him. He's always nice. He's always cool. Like I've had moments where it was really challenging for me because, look, I felt in my career, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Like at the beginning stage of my career, if I said anything positive about Duke, I'm a Duke homer. If I said anything negative about Duke, it was like all of a sudden I was being chastised by Duke fans. Mm-hmm. So for me, I was like, look, I just got to call it how I see it. I know, like I got in a fight one time where I punched a kid in the area I shouldn't have punched. Coach K scolded me. I had to write a letter to Boston College. Like Grayson, I don't know. It was really tough to watch him go through that. But at the same time, kind of did it to himself. So it was tough, man, to watch him go through that. So I'd probably say my answer would be Grayson, probably.
Speaking of Coach K, when we look at that generation of great coaches, you think Coach K, Dean Smith was there. You have that generation. Bobby Knight was in that class at one point. I feel like we don't have that level of college coach because they're jumping all around. They're looking for the next big job. There's so much money involved. What is it about someone like Coach K that makes him Coach K to a player like you?
Well, first off, I mean, Matt can't tell us what he had for breakfast, but I think that's a microcosm of where we are in the world, man. Like, can you tell me what you did last Thursday?
I'd have to think about it. You're right.
I'd have
It
to
would.
check my tweet deck.
Exactly. So if it wasn't for the digital space, how would you know? So I do feel like we live in a vortex now where it's 24/7 news cycle 365. The only thing that you are going to remember is the thing that's going viral that day. The thing that hooked me on Kay, though, was that he called my father and my mother, David and Althea, he called me Mr. Williams. So he treated me like an adult when I was like 16 years old, which I never had somebody that gave me that type of accountability. I never had that. I never felt the weight of a responsibility of somebody saying Mr. Williams, right? I was always Jay, or I was always Jason. So that's number one. And secondly, my man, it was, Arthur, I think you kind of said it in my intro, like if I am doing broadcasting in 15 years from now, I want to do this podcast with you because I'm doing a disservice to myself, right? Like I am going to be, like my goal is to be like that Ryan Seacrest or that Oprah of the sports world. It's what I'm building towards. It's the reason why I've done work with LeBron. It's the reason why I did work with Rich and KD. I'm doing some other stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and I think it's going to be pretty massive. Like that is my goal. I want to own my own IP. I want to help other people establish what their brands are. But one of the things that Kay is brilliant at is he was like, so what pick in the draft do you want to be? And I was like, I want to be the first pick in the draft. He's like, okay, cool. How much money does the first pick in the draft make? I was like, shit, I do not know. Right? Like, can you guys tell me, like, you guys have a great pod. Can you guys tell me what Joe Rogan's pod got sold for?
110 mil. That I know.
Boom, right? But that's big though. So, but you're paying attention to what's happening in your own market. So for me at 16, yeah, I wanted to be first pick in the draft. I never knew how much money the first pick in the draft made. He was like, okay, well, how much does it inflate by each year? What? Inflate? I don't know about inflation. What do you mean inflate? What percentage? What do you mean? Oh, that percent. Okay. Well, how many years guaranteed is your contract? Okay. Is the fourth year a team option? Is it your option? How much does your agent make? How much is your account? Like, so he started talking to me like I was a businessman. I never had somebody do that to me before. I never planned for my goals. I just said what my goals were. So all of a sudden throughout my time there was a lot of preparation, but for things way bigger than just fucking basketball. You know, it was about life. So everything, and it's funny because now when I'm on air, when people talk to me about sports, I'm like, you're just not talking about sports. Like, it's like the pandemic. People are like, oh, it should be easy to play. I'm like, you guys do know that everything that happens in your personal life, you bring into work, right? If you're having a shitty day, if your girlfriend breaks up with you, you're not probably going to come into work and be like, right? Like your mood is going to translate. So if Bronny's kid gets caught blazing on camera, like Bronny's probably going to have that translate to the court. He may be more pissed off that day. Like, man, what got in Bron's ass today? But that's why, right? Like, so for me, I think it was the first time I paid attention to the lessons of that and how to start thinking that way about, managing the game, but the game of life, which the micro games of basketball translate to the game of life. If that makes sense.
Is that mindset that Coach K instilled in you what you brought to you're doing the new Chase web chat series with Serena and stuff, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, man, because for me, yeah, it's a series, but also at the same time, it's just my life, right? So Jay Rose, who gave me this epic line, like my third year doing TV, he's like, hey, appreciate your position while always planning your promotion, right? So for me, how do I get all my ducks lined up to make sure that when I do make that pivot, I have everything in place to pivot correctly, to fully throw myself into what I'm doing next? I can only do that if I'm planning out things strategically. And a lot of that for me, sometimes is around finance, especially being an ex-athlete, man. Like I can't tell you, like, and people are like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I say, all right, so if you make $300 a week and after 4 weeks, like you have your money. Okay, fine. Like you have your money, but you spend 30% of your money on a pair of Jordans that just came out, right? That's applicable to if all of a sudden now you're making $100,000 a month. And somebody's like, oh, there's that dope painting. You're like, oh, I want that painting. I'm just going to go get it for $35,000. You're like, well, wait a second. You spent $35,000, but you made $100,000, but you're in the highest tax bracket. You should probably think about that because now that's actually 50% of the money that you have saved. So my thing is like, I'm always appreciating while planning, but in order to plan correctly, like I need to be competent about what I have coming in. So for me, being able to talk to Serena about, hey, back when you were in Compton, did your pops ever talk to you about money? Or how did you handle the first time you made money? For me, I took my first paycheck and my accountant's like, where's it at? I'm like, it's underneath my bed. I've never seen this kind of money before at all. I don't want this shit to move. And he's like, oh, how about we invest it in the market? I'm like, I don't want to trust this banker with my money. So, but you never learn any of that stuff until you start having conversations about it and you start understanding what's going on with your money. For me, I want financial freedom. And I'll be real with you guys, especially having so many young African-American athletes or minority athletes. Like I grew up in a household where my dad talked to me about that, but my friends or parents never talked to me about that. They didn't have any conversations. So you can only imagine if you're 18, 19 and somebody's like, here's $30 million. And you're like, wait, what? And you have all these people that are coming out of nowhere, the woodworks, right? That are trying to solicit your business. If you're not competent to understand how business works and ask the right questions and not just trust the people who are only been around you, because that's what happens as an athlete. Like, well, cousin Ray has been around me. Jay has been around me. They're my friends. I guess I'll make Ray my manager and I'll make Jay my accountant because I trust them. They've been around the longest. Instead of saying, hey, what fees do you want to charge? What is actually going to happen with my financial portfolio? As a manager, if I pay you X amount of what you bring in, what is your marketing strategy? Like being able to ask those questions to people that you may trust, but they may not have the understanding to actually give you the right blueprint on how to do that. Then all of a sudden you weed those people out. Then all of a sudden you look at the people that are coming out of the woodwork differently, right? Like, oh, this is business. I can hold you accountable. I may not know you, but this is how I'm going to hold you accountable. So I want to inform people to think that way, especially young athletes, because to be real with you guys, that's what I'm doing next. You have these kids, you know, they're going to be 14, 15, 16 years old with name, image, and likeness, going to have a chance to make millions of dollars earlier. And you have to start thinking about that. Who you're surrounding yourself with is going to be very important.
Watching The Last Dance, Jay, growing up during the Magic Jordan Bird era and remembering how great they were, I'm a total homer with those guys. And I say that they're the greatest era of basketball. And I played high school and college. How do you think MJ does in today's NBA?
Well, I think he rips people's hearts out. I think it's like Mortal Kombat, right? Like it's like rip, look at it, and then put it back in your body and be like, yes, I own your heart. I own it. It's mine. And I think that sometimes it's funny because we sometimes beat those people up. Like Russell Westbrook has that in him. He may not have the tool set that Jordan has, but like, well, can you win with Russ? Is he too competitive? It's like, you know, like Tom Brady, seeing Tom Brady on the sideline, like everybody gets into this whole debate about like, well, how come, you know, when we see OBJ, you know, he's yelling at people or he's kicking the ball in the net, like he's, you know, he's crazy. He's out of his mind. But when we see Tom Brady do it, it's like, well, that's what winners do. And I'm like, well, he did win the multiple Super Bowls and that is what winners do. But until you win, right? Like it's interesting, man. So I don't see a lot of that in today's game as much. I do see it randomly from guys like CP3. I do see it from guys like LeBron to a degree, even though he's different than MJ. I see it with Russ. I see it with Rajon Rondo, where it doesn't matter what they need to do. Like Gary Payton told me this story. We were playing USA basketball. I'm going into my sophomore year. That's that team I told you about that went to Brazil with Jay Rich and Zach Randolph and Steve Blake. And we're playing against the USA team with Ray Allen and GP and KG and Paul Pierce, all these guys. And I'm going up for a shot. And as I'm going for a shot, GP's running at me, cursing me, saying, that's off, mother, that's off, blink, all these curse words, right? And he's going by me. And as he goes by me, he just flicks me right in the balls, man. Right? Just, and it wasn't like this kind of flick with the index. It was like right there, right? And so you imagine you go up to shoot, it's like, right? And so now, as I come down, like, I'm losing myself in that with him. And I'm talking to him. But for me, that made me better, right? So then when he went up, I punched him in the balls. I'm like, oh, you want to flip? I'm going to punch you. So him and I are going back and forth. And after the game is over, he pulls me over to the side and he's like, yo, man, like, I respect you. I'm like, what? Because yeah, I'm thinking like we're about to fight, right? Like a guy comes to you after you go interchange like that, we're about to fight. And he's like, I respect you. Don't let anybody, I'll never forget, don't let anybody make you not be immersed in the game. Don't let somebody take you out and get your mind other places. Like what I saw happen to you after I flipped you, you became more in tune with the game. You became more in alignment with the game, became one with the game. You got better. Other players I do that to, they get worse. They get distracted. They get involved, like, with all these other things. And I took that to heart. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, that's what, and if you pay attention to people that really compete, that's what happens. You get lost in the game. I'm not saying it works out every time, but that era, Jordan and those guys had that. I'm not sure every kid that's in today's era has that same kind of upbringing, because the game, everybody, you're still competitive, but guys are kind of like, you're boys with everybody. Like social media, I'm boys with the other top tier player. Like, I couldn't connect with Steve Blake. I couldn't connect with Jay Rich, like, which made me want to beat their head in more because I didn't know who they were, right? I wasn't having long, like, yo, go get your money. I was like, oh, you trying to take my money away from me. So I think the connectivity now makes the game different, but it's also powerful too for these players these days because they can have alignment together. But unfortunately, I think by not doing that, you kind of miss a little bit of that edge because everybody does know each other at an earlier stage.
I got to ask you, because me and my friends had this debate the other day. There were reports of the Clippers players annoyed at Kawhi because he received, load management and whatnot. Can you talk about your views on load management and if that breeds resentment among the teammates?
I'm sure it does. I'm kind of load managing now because I had this horrible tooth surgery, but at the same time, you have to do what you have to do. I think for Kawhi, who's been plagued by injuries for most of his career, I think it's understood. I don't think that's the issue, though. I don't think it's load management with Kawhi, Matt. I think it's Kawhi's inability to articulate what's going on, right? And I think this is what happened with this year's team. When I look at all the teams Kawhi's been on, he's been on teams with really strong leadership. San Antonio, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili. Like, those are dudes, come here. What are you doing? Let's go. Time your situation. Play better. Guard his ass. Follow the scouting report. Like, they'll say it to you while they're holding you accountable. Toronto, Kyle Lowry. He's that leader. What are you doing? Be here. Be there. Serge, those guys talk. Kawhi doesn't talk. He doesn't talk, which if you don't talk, it's hard for you to lead, especially if you're considered to be – the conversation was, man, for the past couple of years, he's the best player in basketball. If you're the best player in basketball, and regardless of whether you load manage or not, you have to be there when it counts, right? So Kawhi and then PG, those aren't guys who grab you like that. Patrick Beverley is a guy that barks at other people. I'm not sure he barks at his own teammates because he's not as physically gifted to say, follow me, I'll take you there, right? Lou Will is Lou Will. That's AI Lou Will, right? He's going to dance, get you buckets, right? But Lou Will, you're not saying Lou Will lead us, right? Like, so I think him not having that combined with load management. Look, man, I don't know, bro. And I heard what you said, Arthur, to go back to your point where you said that guys back then, it's golden era of basketball. But today's athletes are superior to those athletes back then. And I say that maybe not the physicality of the game, but I don't put that on the players. I put that more in the league with the physicality. The league should allow them to play. But you can't tell me that these athletes today aren't better than the athletes back then. Have you seen Gerald Green jump? Have you seen Zach LaVine jump? Have you seen LeBron James? Have you seen Giannis? Have you seen Kawhi? Have you seen, all these cats? Like, the athletics are different. So bring it home, Matt, to your point about the analytics. When you're playing the amount of basketball that guys are playing now, to say that, hey, guys are soft because they're low managing, I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I don't know if I believe that. You tell me what the analytics prove. The analytics are because guys are also playing basketball all year long. Guys aren't taking 3-4 months off like guys used to do back in the day. That's what made Jordan so special, though, right, Arthur? Like, he was back in the gym as soon as the game was over. Now, Jordan's a different breed, but I don't know. The amount of basketball is different now. So what those analytics have to prove, if you're playing 60, 65 games, I'm cool with that. Now, if you're playing 40 games, that's a problem.
You mentioned AI. I'm originally from Philadelphia. I saw AI on the court up close and personal for many years. I actually played with him on the court in multiple pickup games, and the quickest guy I've ever seen in my life. But AI also culturally did something that no other player had ever done. When you look back, you're a young man and you're seeing Allen Iverson and how he's redefining the image of a basketball player. What did that mean to you?
I'll tell you my epic AI story. So, wanted to go to Georgetown. Dad loved John Thompson. Grew up in Jersey, New York. Obviously, I'm a diehard Big East fan, right? So, like going to see Rutgers, Villanova, Georgetown, Pitt, all of those brawls. I love that shit. I loved it. Like, that's what I thought I was going to do. It's going into my rookie year. And like any other kid, right? Get an advancement from an agent, got some money in your pocket, got the plane, took my boys on a G4 down to Miami, where, God, what was it? It was the Delano Hotel back then, right? So we're at the Delano Hotel. It's like me and like 7 of my boys. We're going to this pool party. So we're in line at the pool party. And, you know, my parents made sure that that first year I had security that went around me everywhere like I was LeBron or somebody, right? Just to stop me from doing something stupid. Obviously, that didn't work out later in my career. Anyway, moving forward. So I got security there. So our security guy's name was Tim, right? So I'm like, yo, Tim, I'm not trying to wait in the line, man. Go to tell the door guy we're here. We want to spend this amount on the table. We're trying to have a good time. So Tim goes up, tells the door guy, comes back in the car. He's like, yo, we're good. Let's ride out. I'm like, cool. So we get out of the car. Me and all my boys, got a couple of friends with us. You know, we're like probably 10 deep. And we get up to the front of the line, and they have me wait. Right? So, you know, at that time, I'm 21. Like, I think I'm somebody. I'm like, come on, man. Got me out here waiting. What's going on? And there's like a long line. There's a long line, like crazy long line on the beach. And I see these 2 buses pull up. And I see all these people, you know, at least like 15, 20 people get out of one bus. And I don't know who any of these cats are, right? And I'm in line like this. And they're all walking by me into the club. And I'm like, what is going on? Yo, Tim, what? And then the second bus pulls up. And another 15, 20 people get out. And the last person to get out, I see him. He got this old school Alex English jersey on that goes around to like his knees, right? And he has the chains on. He has a backwards cap on. And he has a bottle of Moet. And he's holding it. Right? He's just drinking it. And I'm like, say hi. And I'm like, so I went from being like angry to being like, and AI walks by. He's walking by me. And I'm like, do I say what's up? Do I seem like a fanboy? Because I am a fanboy, but I'm not. Because I'm about to get my own table. We about to pop it off in here tonight. I'm going to get more bottles than AI. In my mind, I'm telling myself this, right? And then AI goes, yo, what up, Jay? I'm like, what up, eh? He's like, man, who you with? They with us. Come on, man. And he brought me in. I'll never forget this, dog. Like, I was bigger than him. Like, he put his arm around me. I was like, I feel so small right now. He's AI. And they put me over to my table. He sent me some bottles. And I was just like, I'm like, man, like he got 45 people in the club. I'm trying to get 10 in, and I'm willing to wean my people off. Like, she really ain't with us. Like, her and her friend, like, they okay. They're not really with us, but like, I'm just trying to get 5 of my dues in. You know what I mean? 45 people. Like, it's just, and those type of legendary moments, man. Like, that's like, for as much hate as people try to give him, like, he shed nothing but love to me all the time. He would try to beat my head in on the court. But as soon as we were off the court, it was like, hey, young fella, like, what's up? Were you good? Like, and I just, he's forever a legend in my heart, man. Like, he is the icon of what it means when hip hop connected with sports. Like, even at ESPN, like, when I first started working, like, we played heavy metal going to breaks, right? Like, now we play all the dopest hip hop at ESPN going. It's just like, he led that movement, man. And it's, and I feel like James Harden offensively is like the next evolution of that.
As if I couldn't fucking love Allen Iverson more. That just made me fucking love him so much more.
Yeah, you can't manufacture that type of cool. You're only born with it. It's really only AI.
45 people.
I bet like 80% of them were women who wouldn't look in my direction if I paid them 10 grand.
98% of them were women. And then how about the beautiful part? He was like, here's the best part of the story. So he's like, Jay, you good? Who you with? So I point to our whole crew. Remember I told you about those two or three that I was like, I'm not really sure. He was like, yo, they with you? And I was like, well, kind of. He's like, nah, man, you come. And I was like, yeah, you right. Yeah, we are good. They ain't with us.
I don't even know their last name.
No, I know their names were. My boys were so angry at me until we got into the club, and then they were very happy.
That is fucking incredible.
That's amazing.
All right, Jay, let me ask you this, because the NBA, the game has gotten so fast, and I think the refs have a thankless job. But this has kind of brought and rise to a new brand of flopping, and I think it's, in many eyes, it's tarnished the whole product. Do you view flopping in the NBA as a problem, and is there a solution in real time given the speed of the game?
I mean, is acting in the game of life, is that a problem? I just heard Ryan Fitzpatrick on, I don't know if you heard his words after, like, he found out he wasn't a starter. Like, do you think that's real? Do you think his heart really hurts? Like, or do you think there's an element of acting that goes into, like, feel for me because I'm about to get another job. I'm over here watching Kellen Moore with Dallas Cowboys. I'm like, yes, trade for Fitzmagic. Just go get him. Do I think the fine should be a little bit heftier? Sure. But man, it's sometimes it's called gamesmanship. And I know people get frustrated at it. Now, look, if you're flopping, like, sometimes I get a little bit frustrated watching my boy KL play, Kyle Lowry, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's all the time. And when people meet me, they're like, oh, like, you're 6'2", 200 pounds. Like, you're way bigger than what I thought. And I'm like, yeah, look at me on the court. Like, I look like a tiny person. I look like a hobbit, right? Because dudes are aliens. At the same time, I feel for Kyle because sometimes, like, there'll be so many big players around him, like, he won't get those calls. So there is an element of acting that goes into it. When it's overly done, I get annoyed, but I don't mind it every once in a while. Like, think about, like, when you shoot, right? Like, if I take my hands and I bring them into your hands, like, that's kind of acting, right? But it gets a call. It gets me to the free throw line. You know, James Harden does it. Now all of a sudden you're like, you don't know how to guard me. Like, now I have you thinking about how you're guarding me instead of just actually guarding me. I'm winning. Is it bothersome? Yeah, sometimes, but not often.
Do you have an all flop team, current or former?
All flopped it. Well, KL, definitely Kyle Lowry's on that team.
I think Rodman makes it too. Rodman was
all time.
Yeah, all-time flop team.
All time. I've seen Shane do some pretty good flops in college. Bron does sometimes though. Like you know what I mean? I think one time, like, the screen was coming, he says, and, like, nobody touched him. Yeah. This is the best when you see shit in slow-mo these days now, like, with all the camera angles, you can't hide.
Yeah.
You can't hide.
James Harden, Chris Paul. Don't you dare say Marcus Smart. He lays his body out on the line.
That dude's a beast. Marcus Smart is a beast.
Look, I don't got shit to say about Marcus Smart. I ain't trying to have that dude show up to my house. Like, I've seen it. I said it back in the day when I saw him play Oklahoma State. I'll never forget this. I was doing college ball, which is really, it's been cool for me because now doing all NBA, like, I've watched all these guys. Like, high school basketball this year was bigger than college basketball, man. Like, it's such a movement with the way it's happening. So I remember back in the day when somebody called him the N-word supposedly. And I've never seen it. I had a dog. His name was Popo, right? His name was Apollo. And I had two dogs. One his name was Deuce. The other, his name was Apollo. And I had my home in North Carolina. We got an electric fence. So Deuce was like a thoroughbred from Germany, right? Understood German. I gave him German commands. And I'll tie it all back in real quick. But so, you know, one of the things they let you do with the electric fence is they say, okay, your dog has to run through the fence because we want your dog to feel the shock, right? It's pretty messed up. I want your dog to feel the shock. So they had you go to the opposite side of the fence and, you know, like, all right, so now tell your dog to come here. I'm like, all right, come here, Deuce. And Deuce ran to me and he hit the fence and he said, right? So I was like, all right, Deuce is 2 years old. And we got another dog. His name was Apollo. Apollo was from Hungary. Apollo had a full tail, Rottweiler, right? But was a little bit heftier. We called him like one of those fat frat boys, okay, that just drank and wore Jesus sandals all day. That's what he looked like. So we're like, all right. So, like, now tell Apollo to come here. I'm like, all right, come here, Popo. And Popo hit the fence and was like, and went through the fence. And the guy was like, I've never seen that before. We should probably turn up the shock value there. So now, like, we're playing. So Popo's shock value was like 3 times higher than Deuce. So for me, when I see Marcus Smart, I'm like, oh no, like he's Popo. His shock value is like 3. He's gonna do something crazy. You ain't gonna be able to just hold him together, right? So when I saw him run into the stands and start swimming, I'm like, so for me, I'd be trying to tell people like it's such an advantage that he has because I don't know what makes Marcus pop off, but when he pops off, he pops off. Yeah. So like I give him a lot of credit. Never gonna say he's a flopper. He just plays hard basketball.
Hard basketball. Every time I watch that, I'm hoping that he connects with that guy, and I just hope that it just ends differently every time.
He's a throwback. He's like an '80s player. That dude. He could play. He's a bad boy. He's a bad boy Piston.
Okay, so here's one. Give me 5 players in today's NBA that you think could play in the Jordan Pistons era.
I have this debate with people all the time. Giannis could translate, and Giannis has the mentality for sure. I think Marcus Smart 1,000% translates. I tell people I think Bron physically translates, but I think he'd get clotheslined by Lane Beer one time, and he would just like disappear. Like he's not the same Bron if he gets hit.
Do you think Bron would do that if Bron grew up playing that kind of physical basketball? See, I think Bron's grown up in a different era where they call all that stuff, which makes him do that. But I think if he grew up playing that way, it wouldn't bother him. He would push through it.
Yeah, Bron can translate to any era. He's the second greatest basketball player probably to ever live, outside of if you're talking Kareem and the centers and all those guys. But positional player, he's probably number 2 behind Jordan. He can translate, but he's not built. Like Giannis is built like those 80s guys up here. Like he thinks like he wants to grab you by the throat. He lives in the gym. He doesn't care about his brand. He is that dude. And that's why I love him. Jimmy Butler would translate.
Yep. I like that one.
Butler translates. Marcus, we said. Giannis, we said. You know what? I think Kawhi translates too. I think Kawhi would be excellent in that era.
Managed though.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do right with that back then.
I don't think they'd let him get away with young Kawhi, pre-load management Kawhi, but just doesn't talk.
No, I'm talking about guys right now in today's game. That's a load management Kawhi who's injury prone. I don't think it can happen.
I think Chris Paul translates.
CP3. I like that.
CP3 translates.
He's a little bit emotional for the.
So was Isaiah. Isaiah was emotional.
True.
Isaiah played with his emotions. So.
You know who would be unbelievable in that era is Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, super great defender, running off picks. That jump shot, I love that dude. He's thick as a fucking tree. I love that guy.
I like that.
Klay Thompson translates. I want one more good one.
It's tough, man. Bigs are. I mean, because there's no more like.
Yeah, I'm trying to even think of any bigs that aren't just wailing up threes. But to the earlier generation, what's your projection on Bronny? Is he making it to the league now that he's addicted to marijuana?
Well, I mean, I rather him take a hit than take ibuprofen 800 every time when your body breaks down, or take an opioid because they're quick to hand you those type of things. I don't think the weed thing was a big deal at all, man. He has to be smarter, and he's a kid living in the public eye. That's one of the people that I got lucky enough to be around earlier was little Justin Bieber, and I'm watching him navigate all that shit, man. It's granted sometimes life makes you do crazy things, but like there's nothing normal about your life. Mm-hmm. I think he will have access to all the best. Unfortunately, I kind of think there's so much pressure that will go on Bronny to be like his dad. I'm not sure he'll be like his father. He'll have to be secure in him being his own player. I think he has a chance though. I think he has a chance. I don't know. I feel like for all those kids though, it's, when I look at certain kids that like have this following, it's because of their play. It's not because of their fathers and their accolades. So I think, when you're doing it on your own, it's one thing, but when you're trying to do it on your own, but you're doing it behind the shadow of like a LeBron or a D Wade, like a Zaire or, a Bron, it makes it so much more challenging because people will automatically look at your father and compare you to your father. And it's hard for you to come into your own mind with how you want to play the game. That's different than the way your father played the game. I have a little one on the way, and I'm spending a lot of time. I'd be curious to talk to Bron and D Wade about that because I'm thinking about, we're thinking about naming him Zane. I'm like, like if this kid wants to play basketball, he's gonna be around hoops a lot because I'm always around hoops. But like, is he constantly like watching tape of me? Like when I go places and people are talking to me, like him seeing that, like how hard is it to form your own identity when everything is focused on your dad all the time? It's a lot of pressure, man. So be curious to see how those guys try to help them work through that. But I do think he has a chance because I think he's talented. Is he going to be a Hall of Famer? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think he has a chance to be a pro one day. He has it in his genes for sure.
Give me by position the all-time Blue Devil team. You're the 2.
Okay. Even though he played 10 games, I'm taking him. Kyrie at the 1, of course. I'm taking Kai and I at a backcourt. At the 3, I go Grant.
100%.
At the 4, I know people are going to want me to say Leitner, but I take Shane Battier.
Wow.
I take Shane because I think Shane gives me so much more defensively. And I think offensively, his game was similar to Leitner's because he can shoot. And I think with the players we have, I like him in our combination. I like him. I take him over Leitner. I know people are going to think I'm crazy for that, and I don't care. And then, or I could do Late at the 5. I mean, was Late a 5?
No, I think you got to go with like the Cherokee Parks type player at the 5.
I go with Elton Brand.
Oh, that's a hell of a 5. I was trying to think who the 5 might be. You're right. Elton would be a sick 5.
I go Elton Brand. So I go Elton Brand, Shane, Grant, myself, and Kyrie.
What a fucking team.
That's a great team until Kyrie poisons the chemistry.
No, we're not gonna happen. We're not talking about the Boston Celtics Kyrie. We're not talking about Cleveland. We're talking about college Kyrie. We're good.
Over Hurley. That's pretty amazing.
And went to greener pastures.
Well, because
I'm a Celtics fan, so I still have obviously I'm still hurt.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Okay. I mean, talent-wise, you taking Kyrie or are you taking Bobby Hurley?
I think Hurley was one of the greatest PG leaders in college basketball history. And I think, so here's the way I would break it down. Here's my counter. I think you're definitely the 2. You were insanely special in college, insanely. I remember watching you. I think Hurley's just that throwback pure point guard, and you guys would work really well together, although there'd be size issues. Grant Hill's the greatest player to ever wear a Duke uniform, and I agree with you. We never saw the greatest of him in the pro leagues, unfortunately, but he both offensively and defensively, just special beyond comprehension. I think Leitner goes at the 4, but I get your Battier argument, throw up for me. And then the 5 is where I was having trouble. I love your Elton Brand pick. He was special in college too. I don't think his game, although he had a great NBA career, it didn't translate to that true greatness that he had in college. But he was a great college player for sure. I love that. That would be my team.
Yeah, I love Bobby. Bobby's one of my all-time favorites. I just, I remember watching Kai play, and one of the things that people don't recognize about Kai, look, the leader, and that's why I brought in Shane, because I think our leadership position isn't at the PG spot. I think it's with Shane. Shane was one of the things that, and I didn't play with Late, but Shane taught me how to think the game along with Coach K. It was every possession. He thought through the game. So Shane was like our de facto PG as well. One of the things I loved about Kai, I've never seen somebody as talented with the ball in the history of the game.
Wow.
As Kyrie Irving. You can take that, mark it down. People can say whatever they want. I'm not talking about the other things that come along with Kai. I'm talking about sheer basketball talent. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a guard as special as Kyrie Irving. Never seen it. Like, and I think the one comparison I would have, he is a modern day version of Pistol Pete. Like the ball dances. I feel like the ball, it's like I'm watching poetry, but at a really fast pace. And, Kevin and Durant will have conversations about this. He's able to get the ball in nooks and crannies. And it's funny, like his confidence level, I know he said it on the podcast with Kev Durant, where he's like, now I feel like I'm playing with another player and I can actually take those shots, those game-winning shots. He firmly believes, doesn't matter who he's playing with, he has the ability to make that shot. And it's really funny, like knowing him and watching those games, like I don't think he was wrong when he made that statement. Like I'm not saying Kyrie's going to be more impactful in the game like LeBron James is, because he's not. But when it comes down to like, yo, 5 seconds left, you're in an isolated situation, get me a bucket, I kind of agree with them.
So it makes it so frustrating.
I know. And I see it because, like, look, when like Kai and I, we don't talk. And I know that I'm part of the media, and I know that he's one of my favorite players to ever watch. And it's hard for me because I root for him all the time. And I constantly found myself in these situations where we're coming to team, we're like, yo, Kai said this, Kai said that. I'm like, oh, like it's almost like Baker Mayfield. I'm like, Babe, stop.
Yeah. Just shut the fuck up. Right.
Hearts out.
Just shut the fuck up, right?
Whenever someone's like, so Baker, what do you think about OBJ? No comment.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't got anything to say.
Don't take the
say that.
No.
Say that, because all these other things are just like traps.
Mm-hmm.
Like media wants you to be yourself, but they don't want you to be yourself because they'll ridicule you for being yourself.
All right, Jay. We're going to end today with what we like to call a hustle round. I'm going to give you a rapid fire series of 2 opposing things, and you have to answer which you prefer. Do not take longer than 3 seconds, or it's bad luck for 7 years.
Wow.
Keith?
Great. Okay. Need bad luck in my life after 2020. Perfect.
All right. First one. Better pizza, Chicago or New York?
Chicago.
Better coach, Brad Stevens or Eric Spoelstra?
Eric Spoelstra.
Better basketball movie, He Got Game or Love and Basketball?
He Got Game.
Dude, Love and Basketball, don't sleep on it. Next, better basketball documentary, The Last Dance or Hoop Dreams?
Hoop Dreams.
Better actor, Denzel Washington or Robert De Niro?
Denzel Washington.
Doritos, Cooler Ranch or Nacho Cheese?
Cool Ranch.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
French fries or onion rings?
French fries with barbecue.
Favorite New Jersey-born celebrity, Frank Sinatra or Whitney Houston?
I call myself a black Frank Sinatra, so Frank all day long.
More potential, Luka Doncic or Jason Tatum?
Luka Doncic.
Funny or Duke teammate, Carlos Boozer or Mike Dunleavy?
Booze.
Lake or ocean?
Ocean.
Sauna or steam room?
Steam.
Big spoon or little spoon?
What does that mean?
Cuddle, big spoon or little spoon?
Oh, see? Context. Context. What, I don't know. What is big spoon? Are you behind? Little spoon, you're in front?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You don't know what big spoon, little spoon is?
No, I've never said, do you want to be the big spoon or little spoon? I've never used that terminology before.
It's pretty self-explanatory. Do you like being cuddled or do you like being the cuddler?
Oh, God, this is embarrassing. I mean, a little bit of both sometimes, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, everybody wants to be held sometimes. I mean, here and there.
Little spoon, I guess.
That's
We've had some great athletes say they were little spoon too, so don't feel insecure. All right, Jay Williams, you have survived the hustle round. We thank you for being on this podcast. Don't forget to tune into Chase Chat's web series, correct?
Yes.
And where can people find that?
You can find it at chase.com. That easy.
Awesome. You were awesome, man. Thank you so much.
This was electric, man. Thank you so much.